Hey there Guardians, welcome back to the channel. It has been a long time since real life has allowed me the time to sit down and make a build video, which I'm very sorry. However, today I've got a build for you that is not only fun, but has huge endgame potential. And because there's always someone that comes up in the comments and says, "Oh, you can't use this in endgame," I've taken all footage in Grandmaster Nightfalls. So let's jump right in and take a look at the exotic armour we're going to be building around. And that today is the Raiden Flux. Not to Radian, but I normally call it because I'm an idiot. So the Raiden Flux increases our arc staff damage, and that's thanks to its perk Synapse Junctions, which means hits with an arc staff will grant stacks of Synapse Junctions that last for 5 seconds and stack up to 3 times. At times 1 we gain a 20% increase in damage, at times 2 44%, and at times 3 72.8% increased damage per hit. So obviously we're going to be using the Arc Staff Super with this exotic armour. Now the Arc Staff has quite a lot going on, so we'll quickly run through it. First of all, it has a base damage resistance of 90% and a base duration of 20 seconds, which, thanks to the recent updates to Ronin Supers, feels like forever. There are multiple types of attack with the Arc Staff, each doing varying amounts of damage, and each draining different amounts of your super energy. So let's run through them quickly. Light attacks, whether you be in the air or on the ground, will drain 2.5% of your super energy, and hits will deal 426 damage points. Grounded attacks can also be chained to up to 3 hits. A grounded heavy attack will drain 8% of your super energy and deal 624 damage. And then an airborne heavy attack will also drain 8% of your super energy but deal up to 718 damage points and inflicts blinds to nearby enemies. And then there is the Palm Strike, which is the light heavy attack combo. This deals 1455 damage and also inflicts blind on nearby enemies. Also, while you're in your super, using a class ability doesn't drain any super energy. So now moving on to have a look at our abilities, we're going to begin by taking the Gambler's Dodge, which means that if we dodge within 15 meters of an enemy, we will fully refund our entire melee charge. And talking of melee, we're going to take the Combination Blow, which means that kills grant us 100% of our class ability energy and a stack of Combination Blow for 20 seconds. At 1 stack we gain a 60% increased melee damage, 2 stacks 156%, and at 3 stacks a 309% increase to our outgoing melee damage. It also grants a depreciating amount of health for each kill. So at 0 stacks we gain 100 points, and this reduces by 20 for each stack, so that we only gain 40 HP at times 3 stacks on a kill with our melee. So this means before we go any further, we already have an ability loop in place between our melee and our class ability. Moving on to our grenade, we're going to take the old reliable Pulse Grenade, which detonates and causes 172 damage immediately. It then pulses every 0.7 seconds, dealing an additional 276 damage, and this will pulse an additional 6 times, meaning we have a total potential output from that grenade of 1828 damage points. Right then, let's move on and look at our aspects, and we're going to begin with Lethal Current, which means scoring a melee hit on a jolted enemy will apply blind. Also, when we use our class ability, our melee lunge is increased, and our next melee hit will apply Jolt and create an aftershock that deals 216 damage to any enemy within 6 meters of the enemy that we hit. And for our second aspect, we're going to take Ascension, which means that while we're airborne, we can use our class ability to perform the Upward Arc Staff Twirl, colloquially known as Helicopter. This grants Amplify to you and any allies within 10 meters, as well as throwing out little bombs that deal up to 200 damage and jolt any enemies within 10 meters. Now, there is an argument for using Flow State in place of Ascension, however, on testing it just felt better to use Ascension. So this means that just through our aspects we have the ability to stun both Overload and Unstoppable champions. However, in endgame content you really don't want to get too close to an Unstoppable, as it's going to just mince you. So we're going to use our fragments to expand our abilities. And we're going to begin with Spark of Shock. And this is the easiest fragment to explain, as it just means that all of our arc grenades will apply Jolt on a hit. And next we're going to take Spark of Ions, which means when we defeat a jolted enemy, it will create an Ionic Trace. And don't forget, an Ionic Trace will replenish 12.5% of our grenade, 12.5% of our melee, and 15% of our class ability on pickup. Next we're going to take Spark of Feedback, which means after we take melee damage, our next melee, if used within 5 seconds, will deal 75% increased damage. Now this buff isn't refreshable, however it does stack with Combination Blow. And then our final fragment is entirely up to you, however I recommend for endgame using Spark of Resistance, which means that if we're within 15 meters of 3 or more enemies, we will receive a 25% boost to our damage resistance. So let's move on to looking at our armour stats, and this is a very easy one, as we basically have 3 high priority stats and 3 low priority stats. Our high priorities are Resilience, Mobility and Discipline. Aim for a minimum of 80 on these. If you can get triple hundreds, fantastic. If you can only get one of these to 100, aim for Resilience. Our lower priority stats are Recovery, Intellect and Strength. However, you want to aim to have these at least 40, and if you're going to prioritise any of them, go for Recovery. Now, normally at this point we'd start looking at our armour mods. However, we're going to do our seasonal artefacts first, as this will impact on our mod costs. So we're going to begin with Authorised Mods Melee, and this reduces the cost of melee mods down to 1 energy. It affects hands-on, focusing strike, momentum transfer, font of vigour, heavy-handed and melee kickstarter. Next we're going to take Rapid Impact, which affects our breech-loaded grenade launchers, and when we deal damage with a breech loader, it will grant a stack of Rapid Impact for 5 seconds up to a maximum of 5 stacks. This improves our reload speed for our grenade launchers by +5 at 1 stack up to +30 at 5 stacks, and it also improves our reload multiplier duration from 0.99 times down to 0.94 times at 5 stacks. So this is a reasonably large boost to our reload speed for our grenade launchers. We're going to take Trace Evidence, where scoring 2 precision hits within a second of each against any arc debuffed enemy, or scoring 3 arc debuffed enemy kills, it will spawn an Ionic Trace. Now there is a 4-second cooldown between spawns, but you can hit a lot of precision hits in a very short space of time, so this is a fantastic source of Ionic Traces. Next we're going to take the Thick of It, where if we score 3 kills in rapid succession while within 15 minutes of 3 enemies, we will gain an armour charge. Next we're taking Debilitating Wave, which means finishers create a wave of energy that matches our super that travels out up to 15 meters from where we carry out that finisher. We're going to take Concussive Reload, where after damaging a boss or champion or breaking a combatant's shield with a breech-loaded grenade launcher, it will apply Weaken to that enemy for 20 seconds. We're going to take Retinal Burn, where scoring 2 precision hits against any non-blinded combatant. While we have an armour charge active and using an arc weapon, it will blind that enemy, and that consumes 1 armour charge. This is incredibly powerful against unstoppable champions. We're also going to take Kinetic Impacts, where scoring 5 hits within a second of each using a powered grenade launcher will trigger a shockwave underneath the enemy. very similar to kinetic tremors. This shockwave deals 217 damage twice. Anarchy, however, can trigger kinetic impacts 3 times with a single bolt. Then finally, we're going to take Arc Compounding, where we get 15% increased arc damage against blinded enemies. Now, be aware, flashbangs do not trigger this arc damage increase against bosses. For the rest of your artifact, just fill it in with whatever you feel like. Right, with that out of the way, we can now start to look at our mods. And we're going to begin on the helmet with a Harmonic Siphon. And the Harmonic Siphon means that if we score 2 kills with a weapon that matches our equipped super, within 3.5 seconds of each, we will spawn a Orb of Power. We're then going to take a Dynamo, which gives us 2.5% of our super energy if we use our class ability within 15 meters of an enemy. And the final perk is entirely up to you, but I take a Heavy Ammo Finder because, hey, I like heavy ammo. Moving on to our arms, we're going to begin with a Firepower mod, where getting a kill with a grenade will spawn an Orb of Power. Now, because we're only using one, this will incur a 10-second cooldown. We're going to add on to this an Impact Induction, which grants 12% of our grenade energy whenever we deal melee damage, and this incurs a 7-second cooldown. And then finally, a Focusing Strike, which grants 12% class ability energy on a melee hit, and again, this incurs a 7-second cooldown. On your chest, use whatever damage resistances are applicable to the activity you're undertaking. Looking next to our legs, we're going to begin with a Recuperation, where picking up an Orb of Power will give us 70 HP of health. Be aware this mod doesn't stack, even though it says it does in the in-game tooltip. Next, we're going to take Orbs of Restoration, which means when we pick up an Orb of Power, we will receive 10% ability energy to whichever of our abilities has the least energy at that point in time. And then we're going to take an Arc Weapon Surge, which increases the damage of our arc weapons by 10% whenever we have an armor charge. And finally, on our class item, we're going to begin with a Reaper, which means if we get a weapon kill within 10 seconds of using our class ability, it will spawn an Orb of Power. However, there is a 10-second cooldown when we're only using one copy of this mod. We're going to use Powerful Attraction, which means on our class ability use, we will collect any Orbs of Power within 12.5 meters. And finally, a Bomber, which will grant us 12% grenade energy whenever we use our class ability. Now, for those of you that use D2 Armour Picker for selecting the armour for your builds, the following is quite useful, and that's the amount of mod slot energy we've used with our mods. So on our helmet, we've filled up 7 slots of our energy, leaving 3. Our arms, we've used 6, so there's 4 remaining. We haven't used anything on our chest, as it's completely up to you. Our legs, we've used 6, meaning there's 4 remaining. And on our class item, we've also used 6, so you have 4 slots remaining. And this brings us nicely on to weapon selection. Now, this is entirely up to you, depends on your personal preferences. However, I strongly recommend Lost Signal in the kinetic slot. This is a breach loading grenade launcher, area of denial frame, stasis. It just works nicely. However, you can use anything you want, but just remember, somewhere here you do want a breach-loaded grenade launcher. In your special slot, anything arc. Completely up to you. There are lots of good options out there for GMs. There's the Symmetry Scout Rifle if you need something barrier, or you can just honestly, anything arc will work. And then in your heavy, again, you want a heavy arc grenade launcher. Anarchy is fantastic. If you've dropped the Envious Arsenal and Bait and Switch Bittersweet, that is phenomenal in this build. It absolutely crushes bosses. But your choice. Now, there isn't really a gameplay loop with this build as everything feeds into everything else, and the super shits out an absolute ton of orbs for your allies. You are very difficult to kill, you have high uptime with your super, your grenades uptime is high, your melee is devastating, you're applying Jolt, you're applying Blind, you're nearly constantly amplified. It is just cracked. So slap this on, jump into a GM, and go crazy. So that's it then, Guardian. That brings this build video to an end. If you've enjoyed this video and made it to the end, drop a like and maybe even subscribe, please. You will really be doing me a favour. But until next time, Guardian, whatever you're doing, I hope you have a fantastic day.